Hello and welcome to the Bhagavatam. Today we shall discuss something that is on everyone's mind. And no, it's not politics, but it's about money. It's about wealth. We all have been taught that to desire, to need, to want, to aspire, to be ambitious, this is what success in life is all about. And we dedicate our lives to this. We think that the person who has the most, does the most, is the most successful. But today we're going to learn from a very different and very beautiful example during the time of Krishna. And this is about Sudama. Today we're going to learn that desire is not what determines success. Yes, we need things. Yes, we've got to have a comfortable lifestyle, and all that is fine. But that's not the aim of life. That's not the purpose of life. If that's what you're seeking to do, is just either to just make a living or to make a better living than everybody else, to have more than everybody else. And if you've fallen for the idea of either the American dream or the idea of manifesting your desires, well then think again. Because today you'll find out that there are things that matter far more than all the stuff of this world. There are people who understand this. And because they understand it, they have a deeper level of peace, a deeper level of love, and a deeper level of wisdom than the average person out there. So we're going to begin with the Bhagavatam 10th Canto. We're all the way at chapter 80. And we're back to our main scene, which is the scene where King Parikshit is questioned for the wise sage Shukadev. And as he's sitting there talking to, listening to the great sage, the great king, who has now got just a few days left to live, he says to Shukadev, "O Master, I wish to hear about other valorous deeds performed by Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose valor is unlimited." Now you'll notice that in the earlier episodes we have been talking a lot about Krishna's valiant deeds. He's been destroying all the enemies who came to attack him. He's been crushing all of the opposition. He's not a cowardly person. He's not there sacrificing himself. He's not there in some way trying to win our heart and our compassion in that way. No. He is there showing us that God is all powerful and that there is no one who can defeat God. He is undefeated. And that is the status. All through, Krishna has been showing how incredibly powerful he is. No matter how much someone may have attained through whether it was Ravan back in the time of Ram, whether it was Hiranyakashipu who gained great prowess and could not be killed by anyone, or whether it was any of the asuras who tried to attack Krishna ever since he was a baby, Krishna remained undefeated. So now the king Parikshit is wanting to hear more about Krishna's valor, and Shukadev is going to explain to him from a different angle. Parikshit asks, how could anyone who knows the essence of life and is disgusted with endeavoring for sense gratification give up the transcendental topics of Krishna, who is also known as Uttama Shloka, after hearing them repeatedly? Let me explain this. This is very powerful. He's saying, how could anyone who knows the essence of life? So firstly ask yourself, do I know the essence of life? What is the most important thing that one should know about life? What is it? Do you know? And if you do know you know that this endeavor that we have for pursuing sense gratification, trying to enjoy our senses with food, with wine, with all kinds of sensory things, sexuality, you name it. The whole world is full of the ways in which we can enjoy our senses. Do you know that all of that is a waste of time? So he says, how could anyone who knows the essence of life, and let's come back to that question, what is the essence of life? Is it just to survive? Is it to become rich? Is it to be better than others? Is it to be more famous? Is it to be more beautiful? Is it to be more knowledgeable? What is the essence of life? What is the purpose of life? Because ultimately we die, we leave everything behind. So what is the point? This must be understood. And according to the Vedas, the point, the essence, is to find out who you are, who God is, and to develop a loving relationship between you and God. And I don't mean you, the personality you. This personality is on a different trip altogether. It's here to enjoy the world. It's here to enjoy the senses. It is here to prove the ego's greatness. All that is part of that personality that we inhabit. But this is about the soul. This is about getting to know the essence of who you are and the essence of who God is and the essence of life. And that is for us to connect and have a relationship with God. So today you're going to see about an incredible relationship, a friendship with God. So one who knows the essence of life and is disgusted with the endeavor for sense gratification. Why would he be disgusted? Because he knows it's a waste of time. Because he knows my senses are going on driving me and they are pushing me and wasting my life. My senses are in control of me. My senses, my mind, my ego, they're in control of me. I am a puppet on a string. So when I become aware of this, to the degree I become aware of it, to that degree, I become disgusted with the endeavor for sense gratification because I realize it's a trap. It doesn't mean that our senses don't get pleasure. It doesn't mean that we don't want to enjoy. It means that we have to seek a higher enjoyment. That higher enjoyment is not from the senses, is from the soul. When the soul connects with that which is of the divine, of God, then the soul is satisfied. Otherwise, to satisfy the senses is very shallow. You'll notice you'll eat a nice meal. 5 minutes later, the effect is gone. Maybe for those few minutes you were eating it, it was wonderful and enjoyable. You watch a lovely movie. You go to a theater. You have a wonderful partner. You have some intimacy with them. Yes, for a few moments you have some fleeting pleasure and then it's gone. But the pleasure you get by quieting your mind and connecting with your soul and then from there connecting with God, that pleasure fills you throughout the day. When you meditate in the morning, when you rise early, when you connect with God, when you serve Him, that pleasure fills you throughout the day. It is truly satisfying to the soul, to the heart, to the mind. So one who has understood the essence of life and is disgusted with the endeavor for sense gratification, that person cannot give up the transcendental topics of Krishna, cannot give up hearing about them, wants to keep hearing them. Just as those of you that have been regularly listening to this Srimad Bhagavatam, who have been regularly tuning in and wanting to learn more, that is because you have gained a taste, because you have understood that there is so much wisdom here, and therefore you keep coming back for more and more and more, as do I. To me, it is the most beautiful and gratifying thing to do. So he says, such a person who has understood the essence of life, who has understood that it's a waste of time to try and gratify the senses, such a person becomes attached to hearing about the transcendental topics of Krishna, who is known as Uttama Shloka. Uttama Shloka is one who is praised with the most beautiful of verses. And such a person wants to keep hearing these verses repeatedly, again and again and again. Then he says, the king is speaking here, he says, actual speech is that which describes the qualities of the Supreme Lord. So the purpose of speaking right, is to describe the qualities of the Supreme Lord. Real hands, the real use of our hands are for those that work for Him. Krishna says, whatever you do as work, do it as an offering unto me. Whatever you eat, whatever you do, whatever you think always of me. Devote yourself to me, become absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. Then the king says, a true mind is that which always remembers Him, Krishna, who dwells within everything, moving and non-moving. So you say, how can I think of Krishna all the time? Because He's everywhere. He's in everything, moving and non-moving. If you see a mountain, that too is Him. If you see the clouds, that too is Him. If you see a cat, a dog, a human, that too is Him. Everywhere is Him. In everything is Him. Right? So He exists as His energy everywhere. He exists within you. And He exists within everyone. So when you meet someone, know that you are meeting an extension of Krishna, a part of where Krishna resides as the Paramatma, the Super Soul. And He also exists as a being, who we're going to hear about more and more. So that's the true use. The true mind is that which always remembers Him. Man mana bhava mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru, Krishna says. Always think of me, become my devotee, worship me, give your love to me. Surely you will come to me. And real ears are those that listen to sanctifying topics about Him. Sanctifying topics. Because these topics that you're hearing about in the Bhagavatam, they sanctify. Sanctify means purify. They cleanse the heart. They cleanse the mind. And little by little by little, you begin to find yourself rising above the mundane troubles of the world. You are no longer affected by them. You begin to see them with a different lens. You are no longer a victim of the world. You are now like a person flying in an airplane above the weather, above the clouds. And you're no longer under the influence of the modes of nature. In other words, you're no longer under the influence of the forces around you, whether that is the media, whether it is politics, whether it is family. You are able to navigate those waters like a big ship going through an ocean. A tiny boat in an ocean is just going to be tossed all over the place. But a big ship goes very comfortably, like a cruise liner. An actual head is one that bows down to the Supreme Lord or Bhagavan in His manifestations among the moving and non-moving creatures. So wherever you go, bow down to all moving and non-moving creatures. Real eyes are those that see only Him, and real limbs are those which regularly honor the water that has bathed the Lord's feet or those of His devotees. There's an earlier mention, very similar to this, in Canto 2. We are in the 10th canto right now, but in the 2nd canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 3, it was stated there, both by rising and by setting, the sun decreases the duration of life of everyone, except one who utilizes the time by discussing topics of the all-good personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Do the trees not live? Do the bellows of the blacksmith not breathe? All around us, do the animals not eat and discharge semen? Men who are like dogs, hogs, camels, and asses praise people who never listen to the transcendental pastimes of Sri Krishna, the deliverer from evil. What it's saying here is that if your consciousness is like that of an animal, then you will be praising people who are not godly, who never listen to the transcendental pastimes of the divine, of Sri Krishna, the Supreme Godhead, and the deliverer from all evil. Most of us are very fascinated by these presidents, by these billionaires, by these movie stars, by all these people who are supposedly famous. But these people need not be godly. They might be famous, they might be rich, but they need not be godly. They may not be absorbed in listening to the transcendental pastimes of the Supreme Being. They may not even be interested in these topics. And then to follow them is no different than an animal who follows someone. just because that person might give them some food or some scraps from their dinner table. One who has not listened to the messages about the prowess and marvelous acts of the personality of Godhead, and has not sung or chanted loudly the worthy songs about the Lord, is to be considered to possess ear holes like the holes of snakes and a tongue like the tongue of a frog. So he's basically saying that, you may have this human body, you may have a tongue, you may have ears, you may have all of these things, but you are living in a way that is no different than that of a snake or a frog. There is no value. You're not using the human life for what it is meant for. The human life is meant to understand God. Athato Brahma Jigyasa. One must have inquiry into Brahma, into the Brahman, into the absolute truth. One must inquire about what is the truth behind existence and behind creation and around why I'm here and what this is all about. That Brahma Jigyasa, that inquiry, that searching, that seeking for that truth, that is the purpose of life. The upper portion of the body, though crowned with the silk turban, is only a heavy burden if not bowed down before the personality of Godhead, who can award liberation. Liberation means freedom from the cycle of birth and death. And the hands, though decorated with glittering bangles, are like those of a dead man if not engaged in the service of the personality of Godhead. The person who has not at any time received the dust of the feet of the Lord's pure devotee upon his head is certainly a dead body. Certainly that heart is steel-framed if, in spite of one's chanting God's or Krishna's holy name with concentration, the heart does not melt with ecstasy and tears begin to fill one's eyes and the hairs begin to stand on end. See, it is our steel-hearted hearts that do not allow us to feel the ecstasy of love of God. And it is to soften that heart that we are advised to chant the names of God. And as we chant those names, as we chant the name of Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. As we chant the names of God, our heart begins to melt. It becomes softer. We become kinder. We become more compassionate. We become more loving. And as our heart opens up like a beautiful flower, we place it at the feet of the Lord. And as we do, He reciprocates with us by communicating with us, by letting us feel His presence in our life, by being by our side. And we can feel that wonderful presence every day. It's not just something random. It's not just something. There is an ecstasy in this. There is a deep feeling of not giving a damn about anything. Nothing bothers you anymore. Or as my little niece would say, nothing matters to such a person. So the sage Shukadev now replies, his heart fully absorbed in meditation on the Supreme Being. He says, he doesn't go into valor like Parikshit was asking. He takes it from a different turn. He starts like this. He says, Sri Krishna had a Brahmin friend. Now, a Brahmin is a priest. Priests, there were 4 orders of life in the Vedic culture. They were the priests, they were the administrative class, you call them the government or the warriors, or the administrators, the king, and all their different management people. Then there were business people, and then there were the workers. The 4 different classes of people, very simple. The Brahmins were the priests. Their job was to educate people in the matter of all forms of education, primarily about spirituality, but also about worldly things. Yajan, they're supposed to do yagya, do ceremonies and sacrifices, whether that was weddings or it was various other rituals. Patan, they were meant to teach about the spiritual texts and to study them. And Dan pratigraha, they were meant to give in charity and receive in charity. So this was the work of the Brahmins. Brahmin was not someone by birth. A Brahmin was someone who had the qualities of a Brahmin or a priest. So Sri Krishna had a Brahmin friend named Sudama, who was most learned in Vedic knowledge and detached from all sense enjoyment. So he was not attached to worldly things. See, if a person is attached to worldly things, he's not much of a Brahmin. Right? There are many these days you'll come across, especially if you're in India, who are very attached to worldly things, who do all the rituals and everything else, but their aim is just to make a lot of money and to have things and to enjoy life. That's not a true Brahmin. This person was a true Brahmin. He was learned and he was detached from sense enjoyment. Furthermore, his mind was peaceful and his senses were subdued. This is an extremely important sign of a highly advanced person. A highly advanced person, his or her mind is peaceful and their senses are subdued. Why is it important for the senses to be subdued? I think I gave you a hint earlier. It is because the senses are constantly pulling us in various directions, and when our senses are tamed and subdued, as is the mind, then they are no longer directing the course of our life. They are not the ones that are pulling us. We are not their slave anymore. Rather, we tell them where to go, and we direct the senses. We direct the mind. It does not pull us all the time. Living as a householder, as a family man, Sudama maintained himself with whatever came of its own accord. Imagine being satisfied with whatever comes of its own accord. Meaning, being satisfied with whatever it is you have, satisfied with whatever it is you earn, satisfied with whatever it is you get. That satisfaction is very important, even if it is less, because this guy didn't have much at all. The chaste wife of the poverty-stricken Brahmin suffered along with him and was emaciated from hunger. Once she approached her husband. Her face dried up because of her distress. Her face was dried up because of distress. Trembling with fear, she said, "O Brahmin, isn't it true that the husband of the goddess of fortune, the husband of Laxmi," right? She's known as the goddess of fortune, the one who gives all wealth, is your personal friend. The husband of Laxmi, the goddess of fortune, is your personal friend. That greatest of the Yadu dynasty, the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, is compassionate to Brahmins and very willing to grant them his shelter. O fortunate one, please approach him. He is the real shelter of all saintly people. He will certainly give abundant wealth to such a suffering householder as you. Krishna is now the ruler of the Bhojas, Vrishnis, and Andhakas, and he is living in Dwarka. Since he gives himself to anyone who simply remembers his lotus feet, what doubt is there that he, the spiritual master, the guru of the universe, the supreme lord of everything, will bestow upon his sincere worshipper prosperity and material enjoyment, which are not even very desirable? When his wife thus repeatedly implored him in various ways, the Brahmin thought to himself, to see Krishna is indeed the greatest achievement of life. Thus he decided to go. So he wasn't going because he wanted anything from Krishna. He was going because he wanted to see Krishna. To see Krishna, he thought, is indeed the greatest achievement of life. And it's for this reason that he went. But he told her, "My dear wife, is there anything in the house I can bring as a gift for Krishna?" Sudama's wife had nothing in the house. There was no food. They were hungry. They were starving. So she went around begging. And she begged 4 handfuls of flat rice or chipped rice or poha, I think it is, right, from the neighbors, from the neighboring Brahmins. So she had to beg for that, 4 handfuls. Right? She then tied it up in a torn piece of cloth, a piece of cloth, and gave it to her husband as a present for Sri Krishna. taking the flattened rice or poha, Sudama set off for Dwarka, Krishna's capital, which was in the ocean, all the while wondering, how will I be able to have Krishna's audience? I might even get there, but who's going to let me in, he thought. I might even arrive there, but I'm dirty, I've hardly bathed. It's going to be hundreds of miles to get there. By the time I get there, I'll be a total mess. How will I ever be able to have Krishna's audience? Krishna's a great king. Why would he see me? The learned, saintly Brahmin, joined by some local Brahmins, so he met some other Brahmins along the way, and along with them, he went into Dwarka city. They passed 3 guard stations and went through 3 gateways, and then walked by the homes of Krishna's faithful devotees, the Andhakas and Vrishnis, which ordinarily no one could do. So no one was ever allowed in these areas. But because these were Brahmins, and Brahmins were held in the highest of honor, they were allowed to go wherever they wanted. He then entered one of the opulent palaces belonging to Krishna's 16,000 queens. So he entered to one of them. It turned out it was the palace of Rukmini. And when he did so, he felt as if he had attained the bliss of liberation. You know what is the bliss of liberation? Moksha. Moksha means becoming free from the cycle of birth and death. Moksha means that I have no worries anymore. Moksha means I am no longer affected by whatever's going on in this world. It's not that we can stop what's going on in the world, but we can stop being affected by it. And likewise, no longer being affected by birth, death, old age, disease. Not affected. Not affected by the mind, not affected by the senses, not affected by anything. True peace, true harmony. So he experienced this, the bliss of liberation, as he entered that palace. Why is that? Because every palace inhabited by Krishna was no different than being in the spiritual world. Every place where he was, every place where his presence was no different than being in the spiritual world. And being there meant there would be no worries anymore. No anxiety, no fear, no darkness, only light. At that time, Krishna was seated on his wife's bed. Spotting the Brahmin at some distance, Krishna immediately stood up and ran out to meet his friend with great pleasure and embraced him. This is what it means to be a friend of Krishna, to be a friend of God. It means that he is more excited to see you than you might be to see him. So Krishna came and embraced Sudama. The lotus-eyed Supreme Lord felt intense ecstasy upon touching the body of his dear friend, the wise Brahmin Sudama, and he shed tears of love. Krishna then seated his friend Sudama upon the bed in his bedchamber, his wife's bed. He sat him down on the bed. Then that Supreme Lord, who purifies the whole world, personally offered Sudama various tokens of respect. He washed Sudama's feet, then sprinkled the water on his own head. He anointed Sudama with divinely fragrant sandalwood, aguru, and kumkum pastes, and happily worshipped him with aromatic incense and arrays of lamps. And finally, he offered him betel nut and the gift of a cow. He welcomed him with pleasing words. By fanning him with her chamara, this is a whisk, this is a fan-like thing. It's like a white yak tail, and they make a fan out of that. So by fanning him with her chamara, the divine goddess of fortune, Rukmini Devi, also Laxmi, personally served that poor Brahmin whose clothing was torn and dirty, and who was so thin that veins were visible all over his body. The people in the royal palace were astonished to see Krishna, the Lord of spotless glory, so lovingly honor this shabbily dressed Brahmin. The residents of the palace said, "What pious acts has this unkempt, impoverished Brahmin performed? People regard him as lowly and contemptible, yet the spiritual master of the three worlds, of the entire universe, the abode of goddess Shri. Shri is Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, the source of all wealth. She is serving him reverentially, with reverence. Leaving the goddess of fortune sitting on her bed, the Supreme Lord has embraced this Brahmin as if he were an older brother." Taking each other's hands, Krishna and Sudama talked pleasantly about how they once lived together in the school of their guru. "My dear Brahmin," Krishna said to Sudama, "you know well the ways of Dharma. After you offered dakshina, the gift of remuneration, to our guru and returned home from his school, did you marry a compatible wife or not?" So Krishna is asking him that after you left the Gurukul, normally when you leave the Gurukul, you give the Guru a dakshina. A dakshina is a gift, some kind of remuneration. If you're wealthy, you might give the Guru a lot, and if you're poor, you might give him accordingly. All the children that went there were considered the same, whether you were the son of a king or the son of a Brahmin or the son of a Shudra or worker, laborer, doesn't matter. They're all considered the same. They all wore the same clothes. They engaged in the same activities. And they were trained according to their propensity, according to what their nature was. So they were all given different tasks. The guru would figure out what exactly their proclivity was, their aptitude was, and then engage them accordingly. So that when they left the Gurukul, the house of the guru where they were being trained, from the age of 5 onwards, once they left the Gurukul, they would be able to pursue various careers. So Krishna is asking him, after you gave the Guru Dakshina, the gift to the Guru, and you returned home from his school, did you marry a compatible wife or not? So he's asking, are you married? Even though you were mostly involved in household affairs, your mind is not affected by material desires. You can see by his clothing and by everything that Sudama is not interested in material things. Your mind is not affected by material desires. O learned one, do you take much pleasure in the pursuit of material wealth? You do not. This I am well aware of. Having renounced all material propensities which spring from Maya, the Supreme Lord's illusory energy. So having renounced all material propensities which spring from Maya. So this person, although he was a Brahmin, he was married, he was a householder, he yet was not attached to worldly things. He had understood the reality of life, that this is all an illusion, that none of this really matters. And so as a result of that, he had lived a very simple life by whatever he came of its own accord. So he says, some people execute worldly duties with their minds undisturbed by mundane desires. They act as I do to instruct the general populace. So he's talking about Sudama being a person of that type, who executes who does his worldly duties without undisturbed by mundane desires. And he says, such a person acts as I do and engages in instructing the general populace, instructing them about spiritual matters. My dear Brahmin, do you remember how we lived in Gurukul, our spiritual master's school, where a twice-born student has learned from his guru all that is to be learned? He can enjoy spiritual life which lies beyond all ignorance. So here he uses the term twice born. He says, my dear friend, he who gives a person his physical birth is his first guru, first spiritual master. So the parents who give a physical birth to the child are the first spiritual master, the first guru of everyone. They are the ones who teach you. They are the ones who teach you what is right, what is wrong, how to live, what to do. So that's your parents. Right? They are your first guru. In fact, it has been said in the Bhagavatam that by Rishabdev that one should not become a parent unless he can guide his offspring towards the path of liberation, towards spirituality. So he says, and then the person who, when you get older, you get initiated by a guru. At that point, you become twice born, especially as a Brahmin. So that person who initiates you and makes you therefore twice born, because now you are born again, you're born into your spiritual nature, you're born into a higher awareness of things. And such a person who engages you in religious duties is indeed more directly your spiritual master. So that's the second level of guru, the parent, then the guru who brings you onto the spiritual path by twice initiating you as a Brahmin. And then the person who bestows transcendental knowledge upon the members of society is the ultimate spiritual master, the ultimate guru, the person who bestows transcendental or spiritual knowledge upon the members of society is the ultimate spiritual master. Indeed, he is as good as my own self. So in other words, he's saying that person who teaches about me, who teaches spirituality, is no different than my own self, than Krishna himself. So that is why the guru is actually revered in the same way as we revere God. He's given the same level of respect. It doesn't mean he is God, and if he does claim to be God, leave such a person behind, because such a person is not to be followed. But he is as good as, that is to say, Krishna says he is my representative. Just as the ambassador of a country, when they go to another country, they are treated as if they are the president, but they are not the president, they are the ambassador of the country. Of all the followers of the Varnashram system, so Varnashram is Varna and Ashram. Varna is the Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. We talked about that. The priests, the government class, the warriors as well. The Vaishyas, which is the business community, and then the Shudras, who are the workers, laborers. So that's the Varna. And then the ashrams are the Brahmachari, which is the student life, just like these boys are talking about their time as Brahmacharis in the Gurukul. Brahmachari, then Grihastha, when you become a householder, you have a family, you have a home, you get married maybe, or even if you're single, but you have a home, you're a Grihastha. And then Vanaprastha, which is where you leave your home and you start becoming detached and traveling and going to holy places and dedicating yourself more and more to spiritual practice. And then finally, sannyas, where you completely renounce yourself from material attachments. So of all the followers of the Varna ashram system, those who take advantage of the words I speak in my form as the Guru best understand their own true welfare and easily cross over the ocean of material existence. So he's saying here that of all people, those who take advantage of my words. What are Krishna's words? In the Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, we get to know what are Krishna's words. What are the words that God wants to communicate to us? And how does one hear it? Through the Guru. So one who takes advantage of the words I speak in my form as the Guru best understand their own true welfare. So one who has understood what Krishna is saying will also understand their own true welfare. You'll know what is best for you. You will know what is best for your highest and greatest life. People talk today about, I want to live my best life. Well, yeah, what is your best life, my dear? Your best life is not just so that you can become better than everybody else and then be able to gloat about it and think, oh, I'm so great. No, your best life is where you come into alignment with God. You become aligned with His will. You become surrendered to Him. That's your best life. And whether that means riches or poverty doesn't make a difference. Vava moja fakiradi. That is to say, the truly surrendered person is not attached to success or failure, to worldly goods, or to worldly recognition or fame or popularity or whatever else. Their concern is only how can I be surrendered to God. Such a person can easily cross over the ocean of material existence, meaning beyond the cycle of birth and death. I, the soul of all beings, am not as satisfied by ritual worship, Brahminical initiation, penances, or self-discipline. Hear this very carefully. Krishna, the Supreme Lord, the soul of all beings, he says, I, the soul of all beings, am not satisfied or as satisfied by ritual worship. Most people engage in ritual worship. They'll go to a temple, they'll go to a church, they'll go to a mosque, they'll go to whatever place of worship, and they'll perform the ritual, the prayers that are being done by everybody, the hymns that are being sung by everyone, the whatever everyone's doing, they're just doing the same thing. Like, basically, you might think of it like a herd mentality. Okay? He says, I'm not as satisfied by that. Even if that is that you're fasting, these are penances, or self-discipline, you're regulating your senses. I'm not as satisfied by that as I am by faithful service rendered to one spiritual master. Faithful service means that you are committed to supporting the teacher, the guru, the spiritual master. Krishna is not personally here. He is here through his representative. So when we serve his representative, it's as good as serving him. It's just like when you do not necessarily take a letter and take it directly by hand to your friend who lives across the country. You put it in a mailbox. The mailbox, then the mailman or mailwoman comes along, takes it and delivers it through a whole process. So the delivery person of the delivery of the message of God is the guru, is the spiritual master. And if that person is living by the standards that are prescribed in the scripture, just like Srila Prabhupada, then such a person is to be considered a worthy spiritual master. And one should render service unto him or her. So Krishna says, I am pleased by such service. O Brahmin, do you remember what happened to us while we were living with our guru, our spiritual master? Once our guru's wife sent us to fetch firewood, after which we entered the vast forest. And then an unseasonable storm arose with fierce wind. Then as the sun set, the forest was covered by darkness in every direction. And with all the flooding, we could not distinguish high land from low. Constantly besieged by the powerful wind and rain, we lost our way amidst the flooding waters. We simply held each other's hands and in great distress wandered aimlessly about the forest. It's very interesting. Krishna allows all these things to happen. He acts with Sudama, his friend, like he's an ordinary helpless person. Constantly he's doing this. And then when the need arises, he'll show immense power. And then he'll go back and he'll act like an ordinary person, like he's helpless, like he can't do anything. He's lost. I'm lost. Oh my God, where are we? What are we doing? He knows everything. But he's playing along as an ordinary human. And then again showing he's not. So you have both sides. He says, our Guru Sandipani, understanding our predicament, set out after sunrise. So all night these boys were out. They were lost in the forest. And then the Guru set out to find them after sunrise and found us in distress. The Guru Sandipani Muni, he said, O my children, you have suffered so much for my sake. The body is most dear to every living creature, but you are so dedicated to me that you completely disregarded your own comfort. This indeed is the duty of true disciples, to repay the debt to their spiritual master by offering him with pure hearts their wealth and even their very lives. You boys are first-class Brahmins, and I am satisfied with you. May all your desires be fulfilled, and may the Vedic mantras you have learned never lose their meaning for you in this world or the next. So these are the blessings being given by the Guru. And these blessings are what come true. When he says something, it will come true. He says, may the Vedic mantras you have learned never lose their meaning for you. So they've been learning under him Vedic mantras. And may they never lose their meaning for you. May you always remember not just the words, but their meaning as well. Whether you're in this world or the next, in this life or any other, you will remember those words. Sandipani, their guru, says, we had many similar experiences while living in our spiritual master's home. He's referring to himself. Simply by the grace of the spiritual master, a person can fulfill life's purpose and attain eternal peace. Sudama replies to Krishna, what could I possibly have failed to achieve? What could I possibly have failed to achieve, O Lord of Lords, O universal teacher, since I was able to personally live with you, you whose every desire is fulfilled at the home of our spiritual master. So he's saying, what could I possibly have failed to achieve? I had achieved the greatest thing of all. I was with you. I was with you who are the universal teacher. I was with you who are the Supreme Lord. I was with you whose every desire is fulfilled. I had everything I could have ever asked for, ever desired. Sudama says, O Almighty Lord, your body comprises the absolute truth in the form of the Vedas. You're the embodiment of all wisdom. And your body is thus the source of all auspicious goals of life. Meaning to see him, to be with him, is the goal of life. That you took up residence at the school of a spiritual master, of a guru, is simply one of your pastimes in which you play the role of a human being. At this point, Krishna, who knows the hearts of all living beings and is especially devoted to the Brahmins, while he himself is the Supreme Lord and the goal of all saintly persons, conversed in this way with Sudama, and he laughed and he asked his dear friend Sudama with great affection, O Brahmin, what gift have you brought for me from home? So now Krishna knows that Sudama has brought a gift, and Sudama is not telling him that he's brought a gift. So Krishna now is digging. What gift have you brought me from home? I regard as great even the smallest gift offered by my devotee in pure love. But even big, great offerings presented by non-devotees do not please me. This is a very big point to understand. Many times people think they're very rich and they give a lot of money in charity and they donate a lot towards whether it is building a temple or feeding people or whatever else. And yes, there is pious credit they get for that, certainly. It's good karma, certainly. But Krishna says, I'm not impressed. I'm not impressed by their big fancy offerings, which are not done with love, which are done from a place of ego. Look at what a great person I am. Look at my contribution. My name should be printed on the temple wall so that people know that I gave or I helped build this place or this charitable organization or this hospital or whatever else it is. He says, I regard as great even the smallest gift offered by my devotee in pure love. By the way, what is pure love? You ever thought about that? Pure love is when there is no desire for something in return. Anya abhilashita shunyam. Shunya means zero, nothing, no, none. Abhilasha. Abhilasha is your desire. And anya meaning miscellaneous. Any kind of desire. There is no kind. I don't want fame. I don't want fortune. I don't need you to pay my bills. I don't need you to take care of my kid. I don't need you to solve my problem. Anya abhilashita shunyam. Even I don't want knowledge. Jnana karma adi anavritam anukulyena Krishna anushilanam bhaktir uttamam. That such devotion in which one seeks nothing in return, but simply gives one's heart, one's energy, one's mind, one's body, one's soul to God, without expecting anything in return. That is pure love. That is pure devotion. Try and understand this. It's very, very important. It is very difficult for us because we all have problems, because we all need help, because we all need someone who is greater than us to help us. So it is very natural for us to come to God and say, God, please help me. I'm struggling. I can't manage this on my own. I'm having a really hard time. Something's happening to my wife or my kid or myself or my work or my problem. I don't know how to do this. God, please help me. This is so natural for us to do. And it's right. It's not that it's wrong. It's not that it's bad. But if you want to come to the place of pure love, pure devotion, pure surrender, then it is whatever condition you keep me in, whatever state it is, I know this much, that whatever I have, whatever condition I'm in, this is by your mercy. I take it as your mercy, as your blessings upon me. Even if it is a hard time I'm going through, that is your blessing. Even if it is a struggle I'm going through, that is your mercy. Even if it is that I'm not able to make ends meet, that is your blessing to me. Please hear this very carefully. This is truly the struggle we all are having, and this is truly the lesson we all need to learn. So let me read this again very clearly. I regard as great even the smallest gift offered by my devotees in pure love. If one offers me with love and devotion, even a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water, I will accept it. Sudama felt too embarrassed to offer his palmfuls of poha, flat rice, to the husband of the goddess of fortune. Krishna is the husband of Laxmi, of Shri, the goddess of fortune, the source of all wealth. So Sudama kept his head bowed in shame. This great king, what can I give him? I have this little hardened, puffed rice. Not puffed rice, it's flattened rice actually, poha. What, this is not worthy of giving him, right? So he kept his head bowed in shame. Being the direct witness in the hearts of all living beings, Krishna, who is the witness in everyone's heart, fully understood why Sudama had come to see him. Krishna thought, in the past my friend has never worshipped me out of a desire for material opulence, but now he comes to me to satisfy his chaste and devoted wife. I will give him riches that even the immortal demigods cannot obtain. Thinking like this, Krishna snatched from Sudama's garment, he had tied it around his waist, from his garment the grains of flat rice or poha tied up in an old piece of cloth, and he exclaimed, "What is this? My friend, have you brought this for me? It gives me extreme pleasure. Indeed, these few grains of flat rice, poha, will satisfy not only me, but also the entire universe will be satisfied by this." After saying this, the Supreme Lord ate one palmful. Remember, this was uncooked and it was hard. Right? It was hard. You try to chew that, you'll find it's very hard and chewy. It's not quite ready. It needs to be cooked really well. So he ate a palmful and was about to eat a second when his devoted wife, Rukmini, the goddess of fortune, took hold of his hand. Queen Rukmini said, "This is more than enough, O soul of the universe, to secure for this learned Brahmin an abundance of all kinds of wealth in this world and the next. After all, one's prosperity depends simply on your satisfaction." In the purport, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti explains that by taking hold of Krishna's hand, Rukmini implied, if you eat all of this wonderful treat your friend brought from his house, what will I have left for my friends, co-wives, servants, and myself? There will not be enough left to distribute even one grain to each of us. And to her maidservant companions, she said by her gesture, this hard rice will upset my lord's tender stomach. Srila Prabhupada comments that when food is offered to Krishna with love and devotion, he is pleased and accepts it from the devotee. Rukmini Devi, the goddess of fortune, becomes so greatly obliged to the devotee that she has to go personally to the devotee's home to turn it into the most opulent home in the world. If one feeds Krishna sumptuously, Laxmi, the goddess of fortune, automatically becomes a guest in one's home, which means that one's home becomes opulent. So what is the key to opulence? Is to feed whatever you eat as food, to offer it to Krishna. However, do not offer meat, fish, or eggs, and do not offer any foods with onion and garlic in it either. And do not eat the food before offering it. First offer it to him. Whatever you're eating, offer it to him first, and then eat as the humble servant. He is the master, so you feed your master first, and then you eat after that. Krishna says, if one offers me with love and devotion a fruit, a flower, a leaf, meaning some vegetables, or fruits, or nuts, or milk, I will accept it. Right? So do that with love and devotion, and then eat. So she's saying here very clearly that when you do that, she, Rukmini Devi, Laxmi, the goddess of fortune, becomes so greatly obliged to that devotee, she goes personally to his home to turn it into the most opulent home in the world. If one feeds Krishna sumptuously, the goddess of fortune, Laxmi, automatically becomes a guest in one's house, which means that one's home becomes opulent. So Sudama spent that night in Krishna's palace. After eating and drinking to his full satisfaction, he felt as if he had gone to the spiritual world. He was made to sleep in a beautiful bed, like he had never slept in. He was made to eat in a way that he had never eaten, with such incredible foods that he had never had. Remember, he was poor. They didn't even have enough food to eat, and he had been walking a few hundred miles to get to see Krishna. The next day, Sudama set off for home while being honored by Krishna, who is the self-satisfied maintainer of the universe. The Brahmin Sudama felt greatly delighted as he walked along the roads. He was happy. He had fulfilled his purpose. But he had asked Krishna for nothing, even though his wife had been insisting that he should ask. Although he had apparently received no wealth from Krishna, Sudama was too shy to beg for it on his own. He simply returned home feeling perfectly satisfied to have had the Supreme Lord's audience. So to him, having met Krishna was more than enough. He didn't need nothing more. He'll continue living in poverty, it's okay. But the fact that I could meet Krishna, there is nothing greater than that. There is no greater desire. This is the fulfillment of desire. Sudama thought, Krishna is known to be devoted to the Brahmins, and now I have personally seen his devotion. Indeed, he who carries Laxmi, the goddess of fortune, on his chest, has embraced this poorest beggar. He sees himself as a poor beggar, and that he has been, or like a homeless person, or like a, person who begs on the street. So he says, even though I am a poor beggar, he has embraced me. What greater fortune can I have? Who am I? Sudama says, a sinful, poor friend of a Brahmin, Brahma Bandhu. I'm not even a Brahmin. I'm not even a priest. I'm the friend of a Brahmin. I'm like this, like adjunct or a wannabe. And who is Krishna? The Supreme Personality of Godhead, full in 6 opulences. He has all knowledge, all wealth, all fame, all beauty, all renunciation, all strength. He possesses all these opulences in full and complete measure. Nonetheless, he has embraced me with his two arms. He treated me just like one of his brothers, making me sit on the bed of his beloved consort. And because I was fatigued, his queen personally fanned me with a yak-tail chamara. He washed my feet, he massaged my legs. Although he is the lord of all demigods and devas and the object of worship for all Brahmins, he worshipped me as if I am a demigod myself. He massaged my feet and rendered other humble services to me. What more could I ask for? Devotional service to his lotus feet is the root cause of all the perfections a person can find in heaven, in liberation, in the subterranean regions and on earth. Krishna must have thought, if this poor wretch suddenly becomes rich, he will forget me in his intoxicating happiness. Now, this is actually a very important point. Sudama is pointing out one of the big problems. If God blesses us with a lot of wealth, most of us will become intoxicated with that wealth, intoxicated with pride, intoxicated with feeling superior, better, greater, and wanting to enjoy it to the fullest extent. And that will take us away from God, because God is the supreme enjoyer, and all wealth is meant for his enjoyment, not for us. All that is of this world is meant for his enjoyment. We are the servants of God. Jivera Swarup Hoy Nitya Krishna Das. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, our Swarup, our nature, is to serve God. We are all eternally servants of God. But we have come to this world wanting to be the masters, wanting to be the enjoyers, wanting to grab as much as possible and claim it is mine, and then enjoy. And that is the illusion. So he says, Krishna knew that if I would become rich, I will forget and become intoxicated with that wealth. So therefore he didn't give me anything. Thus, being compassionate, Krishna did not grant me even a little wealth. So he sees that as Krishna's compassion. Sudama finally came to the place where his home stood. But that place did not exist. It was now crowded on all sides with towering celestial palaces, rivaling the combined brilliance of the sun, fire, and the moon. There were splendorous courtyards and gardens. So he lived in a broken down hut. Think of a slum. Think of a, some, like you might see some homeless person living under the bridge or some place, where they're dirty squalor like that, right? And now he comes back to that place where his home was, and he sees splendid courtyards and gardens, each filled with flocks of cooing birds and beautiful ponds in which wonderful lotuses are growing. He sees finely attired men and doe-eyed women standing in attendance. Sudama wonders, what is all this? Whose property is it? How has this all come about? As he continues to ponder in this way, the beautiful men and maidservants, as effulgent as demigods, come forward to greet their greatly fortunate master with loud songs and instrumental music. So they're greeting him because he's their master. He doesn't even know it. When his wife heard that her husband had arrived, Sudama's wife quickly came out of the house in a jubilant flurry. She resembled Laxmi, the goddess of fortune herself, emerging from her divine abode. When the chaste lady saw her husband, her eyes filled with tears of love and eagerness as she held her with her eyes closed, she solemnly bowed down to him, and in her heart she embraced him. Sudama was amazed to see his wife shining forth in the midst of maidservants adorned with jeweled lockets. She looked as effulgent as a demigoddess in her celestial airplane. With pleasure he took his wife with him and entered his house, where there were hundreds of gem-studded pillars. So gemstones on all the pillars, just as in the palace of Lord Mahindra, that is Indra himself. Just as you see in the palace of Indra, the king of the devas, of the demigods, he saw in his own house. In the purport, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti comments that Sudama was simply astonished at the sight of his wife, as he wondered, who is this demigod's wife who has approached such a fallen soul as me? The maidservants informed him, this is indeed your wife. At that very moment, Sudama's body became young and beautiful, bedecked in fine clothing and jewelry. So there was an immediate transformation. The word pritaha here indicates that those changes gave him considerable pleasure. The famous Vishnu Sahasranam, or 1,000 names of Vishnu found in the Mahabharata, immortalizes Sudama's sudden opulence. It says, Lord Vishnu is also known as he who brought Indra's opulence to this earth. Indra is the king of the devas, king of the demigods, who brought Indra's opulence to this earth for the benefit of his devotee, Sridama or Sudama. In Sudama's home were beds as soft and white as the foam of milk, with bedsteads made of ivory and ornamented with gold. There were couches with golden legs, as well as royal chamara fans, golden thrones, soft cushions, and gleaming canopies hung with strings of pearls. Upon the walls, sparkling crystal glass inlaid with precious emeralds shone jeweled lamps, and the women in the palace were all adorned with precious gems. As he viewed this luxurious opulence of all varieties, the Brahmin Sudama calmly responded to himself about his unexpected prosperity. Sudama thought, I have always been poor. Certainly, the only possible way that such an unfortunate person as myself could become suddenly rich is that supremely opulent Sri Krishna has glanced upon me. After all, my friend Krishna is the enjoyer of unlimited wealth. He must have noticed that I secretly intended to beg from him, even though he said nothing about it when I stood before him. Krishna actually bestowed upon me the most abundant riches. In this way, Krishna acted just like a merciful rain cloud. So a rain cloud gives rain everywhere. He doesn't look at who is deserving and who is not deserving. Krishna, in that way, Sudama is seeing himself as not deserving, not worthy. And yet Krishna has been so kind and blessed him with all of this. In the purport it is written, Sri Krishna is the unlimited enjoyer. He did not tell Sudama how he was going to fulfill his unspoken request, because according to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Krishna was thinking at the time, my dear friend has given me these grains of rice which are greater than all the treasures I own. This poha, this flat rice that was stale and old and hard, Krishna saw it as greater than all the wealth and treasures of the universe. Even though in this house, Krishna thought, even though in his own house, Sudama had no such gift to bring me, he took the trouble of begging it from neighbors. Therefore, it is only proper that I give him something more valuable than all my possessions. But nothing is equal to or greater than what I possess. So all I can do is give him such meager things as the treasures of Indra. So I shall give him the wealth just as Indra has in the heavenly planets, Brahma and the other demigods. Embarrassed at being unable to properly reciprocate his devotees' offering. What was great about Sudama's offering? It was that it was given with so much of love and devotion, with no expectation of return. And this indeed is the criteria that God is looking for. Nobody wants to be loved when there's an agenda behind that love. Least of all God. He sees the agenda. He knows immediately what's on your mind. He knows exactly what you're thinking. So when you come to him with an agenda, he might give you what you want. But you will not get the real thing. The real opulence, the real wealth is to get he himself. He is the ultimate source of all treasure. ultimate treasure. He is the ultimate wealth. He is the everything. Hamaro dhan Radha Shri Radha Shri Radha. This is a beautiful song in which we sing, my real wealth is Radha, is Krishna. You, God, are my ultimate wealth. You are the greatest wealth of all. And if I have you, I need nothing else. So Krishna is embarrassed at being unable to properly reciprocate his devotees' offering. Krishna says, I have nothing to offer you. You have given me so much love and devotion. What can I do for you? Krishna therefore bestowed his favor on Sudama silently. Krishna acted just like a magnanimous rain cloud which provides the necessities of life for everyone near and far, but feels ashamed that its rain is too insignificant a gift to give in return for the abundant offerings that farmers make to it. Out of shame, the cloud may wait till night time, when the farmers are asleep, before watering their fields. In ancient times, it was the practice that farmers would offer all kinds of, make all kinds of offerings and sacrifices to receive good rain. That's what's being referred to here. The Supreme Lord considers even his greatest benedictions to be insignificant, while he magnifies even a small service rendered to him by his well-wishing devotee. You see this? God considers whatever he can give you to be insignificant compared to even the smallest service rendered to him by someone who is well-wishing. Thus, with pleasure, the Supreme Soul, the Supreme Godhead, accepted a single palmful of that flat rice brought to him. Krishna is the supremely compassionate reservoir of all transcendental qualities. Life after life, may I serve him with love, friendship, and may I cultivate such firm attachment for him by the precious association of his devotees. To a devotee who lacks spiritual insight, the Supreme Lord will not grant the wonderful opulences of this world. Hear this very carefully. To a devotee, to one who lacks spiritual insight. Okay? Your knowledge is not strong, if your wisdom is not deep, to such a devotee who lacks spiritual insight, the Supreme Lord will not grant the wonderful opulences of this world, kingly power and material assets. So he can give you everything, give you anything. But if you don't know how to handle it, if you don't have deep spiritual wisdom and insight, he won't give it to you because it will bring you down. Indeed, in his infinite wisdom, Krishna knows how the intoxication of pride can cause the downfall of the wealthy. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti says, the humble Brahmin Sudama considered himself unworthy of the Supreme Lord's most rare and valuable benediction, which is pure devotional service. This is the greatest blessing. This is the greatest gift that God can give you, pure devotional service. Mood of complete and pure, unmotivated, uninterrupted service to God. That is the greatest gift. He reasoned, Krishna reasoned, that if he had any true devotion, Krishna would have granted him perfect, unflinching devotion rather than the material riches and servants he had received. So Sudama is actually feeling, I must not be having any devotion. I must not be doing anything right. I must be such a worldly-minded fool that Krishna gave me all these material things, but he didn't give me pure devotion. This is how a pure devotee thinks. I have no devotion. Everybody else is so devoted. I have no love. Everybody else is a lover of God. This is humility at the deepest level. And this is what Sudama had. So Sudama is thinking this. He's thinking that if he had any true devotion, Krishna would have granted him pure, unflinching devotion rather than these material riches and servants. Krishna would have protected him by denying him such distractions. The Lord will not give a sincere but less intelligent devotee as much material wealth as he desires, but only what will promote his devotional progress. Sudama thought, a great saint like Prahlad can avoid becoming contaminated by immeasurable wealth, power, and fame, but I must always be wary of temptation in my situation. We may understand that Sudama's humility assured him of ultimate success on the path of bhakti, of devotion. Sudama remained absolutely devoted to Krishna, who is the shelter of all living beings. By means of his spiritual intelligence, he firmly fixed his determination. Free from greed or avarice, he enjoyed, together with his wife, the sense pleasures that had been bestowed upon him, always with the idea of eventually renouncing all sense gratification. Krishna is the God of all gods, the master of all sacrifices, the supreme ruler. But he accepts the saintly Brahmins as his masters, so there exists no deity higher than them. Thus, seeing how the unconquerable Supreme Lord is nonetheless conquered by his own servants, his dear friend Brahmin, Sudama, felt the remaining knots of material attachment within his heart being cut by the force of constant meditation on Krishna. This is beautiful. See, it talks about how Krishna, the Supreme Lord, is conquered by his own servants. His dear friend Sudama felt the remaining knots of material attachment within his heart being cut by the force of his constant meditation on Krishna. This is what happens. By serving Krishna with that pure heart, the attachment to this world fades away. It dissolves. Just as if you put acid on something, it dissolves that thing. In a short time, he attained Krishna's supreme abode, the destination of great saints. Krishna always shows Brahmins special favor. Anyone who hears this account of the Supreme Lord's kindness will come to develop love for him and thus become freed from the bondage of material work. So with that, we end today's Bhagavatam, this incredible narrative of Sudama. It's not that one has to be a Brahmin. It doesn't mean that it bestowed only upon the Brahmins. It bestowed upon anyone who chooses to love God. So that's an important piece to understand. All right. Are there any questions? Would anyone like to ask something? And if you have a question, please write it down. Yes, do listen to that poem. Vava Mauj Fakiradi. Kade Dikhavan Chela Chabila Kade. So sometimes the true devotee of God is sometimes lives in palaces and sometimes may sleep out on the street. Sometimes they eat a big feast. Kadite Khavan, Chela Chibila, Kadite Khavan, Kheer Ahiradi. They're happy in all circumstances, whether they have a big feast to eat or whether they have just leftovers or thrown away food, just, that's all they can get. Whether they live in a palace or they live in the street, doesn't matter. They're perfectly happy under all circumstances. That is where you have transcended the world. You are no longer affected by it. That's the place where we all need to come to one day. And we can all do it by association, by associating with each other, by associating with these wonderful words of wisdom written by our great acharyas and gurus. Yes, it is truly a wonderful and blissful state to be in. Absolutely. Any further questions? Anything you'd like to know? All right, I'll see you next week. Just so you know, we've moved the timing. We're now meeting at 5 p.m. Pacific, and that is 8 p.m. Eastern, every Tuesday. Hare Krishna. See you next week.